So I want to talk a little bit about absolute versus directional in the context of knowing how to utilize resources, in particular, tax dollars, okay? So when we pay our taxes, right, we're giving that money so that the government can use it to benefit the whole. And so, one person shouldn't have to build a road that 1 million people drive on. So you all pay into a pool and that money is used to help the whole. Okay, and that makes sense. Everybody's probably fine with that. But who decides how much should be spent on each thing? And is this the optimal spending? And how are we tracking what we're getting for it to know whether we should spend more or less? And who should have the power to change the way that these things work? So I've said a lot without any, sometimes I feel like I say sentences that are just way too long that no one can follow. But I'm looking at a pie chart here of what the US government spent in 2022, all right? And so to quickly break it down, it's 2.1 trillion in healthcare, 1.7 trillion in education, 1.6 trillion in social security and pensions, 1.1 trillion in defense, 700 billion in welfare, and then interest and other is 2 trillion, okay? This is likely gonna stay the same regardless of who is in office. But we're spending 2.1 trillion on healthcare, okay? I know a little bit about healthcare, so we'll talk about that. If we ate well and exercised and didn't do drugs, that would essentially cost the government $0, and the overall health of this country would improve. I literally think that we could cut this spend by 90% if people were not just cut the spend, but get better results from healthcare by a lot simply through the act of either creating the space or giving the education, or I'm not exactly sure how. But what I'm partially getting at is we're getting very little for our healthcare dollar in this country. It's poorly utilized. You're fighting against, if you can't address social determinants, it's a lost fight. You can keep throwing more money at it, but it's stupid. I shouldn't say it's stupid. It doesn't make sense if you actually see what's happening. But we're going to continue to spend this much. And if anybody wants to cut healthcare spending, people will outrage. They feel they're being taken advantage of. I'm not saying we should cut the spending. I'm just saying, is this the right amount? Who decided it? And why do we do it this way? Why don't we do it differently? Education, 1.75 trillion. I mean, could we not just build the curriculum on YouTube? I mean, is the way that this system's set up really the optimal way to deliver education to tens of millions of children, given the current technologies? Is this the way that we should spend that money? Maybe we should spend more. I mean, if anything, I would actually say education should get more money. But who is deciding how this gets spent? Who's tracking the outcomes? And outcomes that matter. We all know that these tests, why do we allow this? So maybe you would say, okay, we should spend more on education, and I'll vote for the party who, but what I'm saying is who's actually making these decisions? When I look at the government and you see who's in charge of education, it's like, my God, what are we doing? If this was a business competing with other businesses and I could compete with it, I would crush it. It is behaving completely foolishly. If there was any way of reality testing whether this was effective or not, and having some sort of natural selection process where you could see if this was good or not, it would get crushed. The only reason it survives is because you keep it alive on life support. the fact that it's running is not good reason for it to keep running. Like we should, most people would probably agree with this. Okay, yes, you're right, what should we be doing? I think that we need to start having the conversations, right? We need to really talk about teachers shouldn't be up in arms if they might lose their job. If it's better for the country and we care about the country, well, the teachers are part of it. We're gonna do what's better for the country, and that also includes the teachers. That might, I don't know exactly what that means, but I think what a lot of it is, it's like people wanna have their cake and eat it too. People would rather things be bad for others and good for them, and then they wanna pretend that they're virtuous. What I'm saying is, we just need to be honest, really. Do you love being a teacher? If you love being a teacher, you're gonna find a role in this new world. You're gonna embrace it and make it better. If you're worried about losing your job as a teacher, you probably don't love being a teacher. Because teaching is something that there's always room for more of it. Teaching and learning go hand in hand. And I think what I'm trying to point out is two things. One is, yes, we can look at the government and say this is running terribly, but I also think we have to look at ourselves as the people and say, if we're not willing to take accountability for what changes might mean, for what it might mean to be responsible, then do we deserve it? Or is this what we deserve? Is this exactly what we want? Because it allows us to hide behind a semblance of righteousness or virtue or whatever. I don't really know. I see this amount of money, and I think that, if you go to a country that doesn't have but 1% of this, and you doubled their budget, the benefits that they would get for it, sure, would there be corruption? I'm sure there would be, right? I'm not pretending this world has to be perfect. I'm just saying that we spend money because we have it, and we have to, and it just kind of has to happen, and nobody actually cares. They don't treat it like it's their own, because it's not. I think we need to start caring more, having more accountability, and communicating. I think the reason everyone is afraid of government change is because they're afraid the government's not for them. And that's probably true, because the government's not for them. But what we want is a government that is for us, then enacting change and helping us get to where we need to be. And I don't know if there's room for that in this country. I don't know if there's an appetite for that. I don't know if these words would resonate with people. I feel like someone needs to stand up and be an adult in this country. I feel like politicians are playing children's games with children, which is us. We are being infantilized, and we're accepting it. I am not sure how we've allowed ourselves to get here. And this is not a critique of either party. This is a critique of myself and the American people. We know better. We really do know better. The fundamentals of what matter here, what we should be doing in terms of fairness, resource allocation, distribution of wealth, hard work, discipline, coming together, community, practicality, a scientific mindset, caring, relationships, love, these aren't just words. If you really believe that that's the path, then elect someone, or this doesn't have to happen through politics. Behave that way. I'm disgusted when I turn on the news. I'm disgusted at this. I really feel there's a way to do this better. I don't know if we need a fresh restart, if we need to just like wipe, like we're just gonna say, we say we have, term politicians, but that's not how it works, because they get entangled in their hooks and the next, and the cycles go and the deals pass, and there's no startovers here. There might be a new face, but the same games that are being played and gimmicks, they pass forward. We need a way of seeing transparently what's happening, agreeing on what we want to happen, honestly, within an order of magnitude, and then working towards getting there. Something as simple as when we say we're going to send aid or money to a country, right? How much should we send? And why that country? And is that what the American people want? And does it make sense? If we were to build an agreement, a consensus of what we get for our money and how that matters to us and what we value, and we were to use that as a means of holding our politicians accountable for the resources, our money that we're giving to them, would we be happy with how they're spending it? And could we hold them more accountable? If I had this much money, the things I could do, and not that I'm special, right? Like when you see how much money this is, we could find this much spend in healthcare. My God, if we put this towards a dedicated research team of, I just can't imagine what we could do for our people. We could build apps, make them free to everyone, develop technologies scale relatively freely. There are so many ways we could build. I just can't. This is such an unoptimized way. I'll stop there. What I'm curious about, I'm probably not fully conveying the views of what I would want for the future. But do you get a sense of what I'm saying? When you go and vote for a candidate, are you voting on whether they're going to spend 1.72 trillion on education versus 1.78 trillion on education? Or are you voting on whether they should spend 100 billion or 10 trillion? Right? Like, how much of a voice do you have? Is it 1%? It's gonna be 1.72 trillion or 1.78 trillion. That's what you get to decide. You get to decide on a decimal of a decimal. That's what your vote means. And then you don't get to decide what's done with it. What I'm saying is this the kind of relationship we want to have with our government? Is this really the way that we want this to run? Because we have the choice. This is our world. We don't have to have it this way. All it takes for it to be different is for us as a people to agree that we want it to be different and agree on what that new thing is. It seems like there's a way. It seems like there should be a way. And I don't mean an independent party, not an individual. I mean the American People Party. What does the American people want? If you're really happy with how you're being represented, if you really feel that the people in power, day in, day out, are really thinking, what can I do significantly to make my constituency be happier and better, then great. I don't think that that's what they're doing.